All right, so we're going deep on John 14, 1-3 today.
Yeah.
And I know you folks listening already know this verse backward and forwards,
Absolutely.
so we're not going to rehash the basics.
Yeah.
What we're after is the stuff that doesn't usually get talked about.
Right.
The kind of stuff that'll get pastors and Bible study leaders thinking.
Yeah, some fresh angles.
Yeah. Fresh perspectives, maybe some surprising sermon illustrations.
Things that'll make a congregation really stop and think twice. Yeah.
Exactly. And we've got a great resource to draw from today.
Oh, yeah.
We've got analyses of sermons from all sorts of different pastors,
Okay.
all tackling this same verse, John 14, 1-3.
Interesting.
What's fascinating is how, even though they're all starting with the same text,
Right.
they end up in such different places.
I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
Me too.
Yeah.
So let's start with that classic image of heaven as a prepared place.
Okay.
I mean, we all know the whole mansion's interpretation.
Right, right.
But some of these sermons go way deeper.
Mm.
Well, like Canvas Community Church.
Yeah.
They compared it to a host, like excitedly getting ready for guests,
Okay.
emphasizing that welcoming, open door kind of feeling.
Oh, I like that. It's a subtle shift, but it makes a big difference.
It does, right?
Like, it's not about being exclusive.
Yeah.
Or earning your spot, you know? It's
Exactly.
about God's eagerness to have us.
Yes, exactly. And then there's FCF Church. They went deep on the word Mone.
Oh, interesting. What did they say about that?
Well, they suggested it could mean a space that's designed just for each believer.
Oh, I see. Like a custom-made room.
Exactly. It taps into that longing for a place that really feels like home.
Yeah, like it was made just for you.
Yeah.
That's a powerful image. And you know, if you think about it in the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it speaks volumes about how intimately God knows each of us.
Absolutely.
He's not just preparing some generic heaven, you know?
No.
He's crafting a place tailored to our individual needs, desires, everything.
That is so good. And then we've got Community Baptist bringing in the Jewish betrothal tradition.
Okay, now that's something you don't hear every day.
Right.
So how did they tie that in?
They compared Jesus preparing a place to a groom preparing a home for his bride.
Ah, that's beautiful.
Isn't that?
So suddenly it's not about real estate anymore.
Yeah.
It's about a covenant,
Yes.
a promise, this deep committed love.
What strikes you about that analogy?
It's like it injects this level of emotional depth that's often missing from how we think about heaven.
Yes. Yes.
It's not just a place we go to, you know.
the place we're longed for.
Exactly. Jesus isn't just up there building. He's preparing this place out of love,
Yeah.
anticipation, this deep desire to be reunited with us.
It really makes you think about how we preach about heaven, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, do we emphasize the rules of entry
Mm.
or the love that awaits?
The why versus the what. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if we really want to connect with people's hearts,
Right.
we need to tap into that emotional core.
Ab-
We need to paint a picture of heaven that resonates with their deepest longings.
Yes. Longing for love, belonging, acceptance.
All of that. But of course, there's more to John 14, 1-3 than just heaven.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's also about Jesus as the way, the truth, and the life.
Right.
And here, too, we see some fascinating contrasts in how these pastors approached it.
Oh, now this is where it gets really interesting.
Right. So Fierce Church,
Yeah.
they use the analogy of a subway system.
A subway system. Okay. I'm intrigued. How did that work?
They talked about how the disciples were feeling so confused
Yeah.
as Jesus was getting ready to leave them.
Right.
They were feeling lost, like someone trying to navigate a crazy subway map.
Okay. I can see where they're going with this.
And Jesus, in this analogy, he's the map, the guide, the one who shows them the way.
It's such a brilliant illustration, especially for our times.
Isn't it?
So many people feel lost and overwhelmed in today's world.
Yeah, it's a relatable feeling.
And this analogy speaks directly to that experience, you know?
Yeah.
Offering Jesus as the one who can bring clarity and direction amidst all the chaos.
And what I found interesting is that it doesn't shy away from portraying the disciples as confused.
Yeah.
It normalizes that feeling of uncertainty, which I think a lot of people can relate to.
Oh, absolutely. We all feel that way sometimes.
Right. But then on the other hand, you have New Salem Baptist Church,
Yeah.
and they took a totally different approach.
How so?
They emphasized the exclusive nature of Jesus's path.
Okay.
They did a deep dive into the Greek word hodos, and the definite article the,
Okay, yeah.
arguing that Jesus isn't just a path, he's the path.
That's an interesting distinction. It raises some questions, doesn't it?
Definitely, like how we present the idea of salvation.
Yeah.
Do we focus on the open invitation,
Right.
the welcoming embrace?
Or do we emphasize the urgency of choosing the right path?
Hmm.
The potential consequences of going astray, you know?
It's a tricky balance.
It is, and the way we choose to present it can really impact how people understand their relationship with God.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Do we lean towards inclusivity or exclusivity?
Good.
Comfort or a call to action? So many things to consider.
It's a lot. And that's what's so great about these deep dives,
What do you mean?
They make us wrestle with these tough questions.
Yeah.
To think critically about how we present these truths to our congregations.
For sure. Makes you really examine your own approach.
Absolutely. But speaking of presentation,
Yeah.
let's talk about those sermon illustrations, because these pastors got creative.
Oh, I love a good sermon illustration. Tell me more. Yeah, it's amazing how they managed to bring in these references you wouldn't expect to hear in a sermon about John 14, 1-3.
Right, like Canvas Community Church, using Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, the football player.
Like you've got this football legend, multiple Super Bowl wins.
Yeah.
Like the epitome of success, right?
Right.
And yet, in his own words,
Yeah.
there was still this feeling of something more that was missing.
Huh. That's a really interesting way to illustrate that emptiness that, worldly success can't fill. Yeah. It speaks directly to the heart of what Jesus is offering in John 14, 1-3.
Yeah.
This different kind of fulfillment, a home that's so much more than just material stuff.
And it's relatable,
Yeah.
Most people aren't Tom Brady,
Right.
but I think a lot of folks have felt that same ache at some point.
That sense that there's got to be more to life than achievements.
Yeah, more than possessions, more than anything the world can offer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it opens the door to talking about spiritual fulfillment in a way that feels real,
Grounded in everyday experience.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got Fierce Church and their Philadelphia subway analogy.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one.
It's not just about being lost, right?
No.
It's about that specific feeling of being totally overwhelmed by choices,
Yeah.
directions, all these different paths, not knowing where to turn.
Anyone who's been in a complicated subway system knows that feeling.
Instantly, yeah. It makes the disciples' confusion so much more visceral.
It's much more real.
It's not just an abstract theological concept anymore. It's a feeling.
Like something we've all experienced at some point.
And it positions Jesus as that much-needed guide.
The one who brings clarity.
Direction, yeah, amidst all the chaos.
And it also kind of subtly reinforces the idea of choosing the right path.
Oh, how so?
Well, think about it. In a subway system,
Yeah.
taking the wrong train has consequences.
Yeah, you end up in the wrong place.
Exactly. It
Well-
adds that layer of urgency to the message
Right.
without having to resort to all that fire and brimstone imagery.
Subtle but effective. And then there's FCF Church connecting the verse to the home improvement craze.
It seems like everybody's obsessed with creating the perfect home these days.
It's true. It's a whole cultural phenomenon.
It is.
And it speaks to this deep human desire,
This longing for a place that's just right.
Exactly. And FCF Church, they tap into that,
Yeah.
linking it to our longing for a heavenly home.
They're basically saying, that feeling you get when you see a beautifully renovated home? That's just a taste of the longing God put in your heart for something even better.
For a home that's truly eternal.
Yes. It's a brilliant way to bridge the gap between the secular and the sacred.
To show how our everyday experiences can actually point us towards spiritual truths.
It makes you realize that sermon illustrations are everywhere.
If you just know where to look.
Yeah. It's all about connecting the dots between what people are already thinking about.
And the message of the gospel.
But these pastors, they didn't just get creative with their illustrations.
Boy.
They dug deep into the theology of John 14, 1-3.
Oh, yeah.
And they used some really interesting cross-references.
Okay, like what?
Well, for example, Canvas Community Church, they brought in Isaiah 59.2,
Okay.
which talks about sin separating us from God.
Right.
And then they connected it to Hebrews 9.11-13,
Okay.
where Jesus is presented as our high priest,
Right.
bridging that gap between us and God.
It creates this powerful image of Jesus as the way back to God's presence. The one who makes that prepared place accessible.
It's a classic theological move, but it's done so well here.
It's a good reminder that John 14, 1-3 isn't just some standalone promise.
Yeah.
It's part of this bigger story.
Of redemption, this narrative that runs through the whole Bible.
Exactly. And what about Fierce Church? What did they do?
Oh, they had a really interesting take using Matthew 1.21.
Oh, okay. Remind me what that verse says.
It's where it talks about Jesus' name, meaning he will save his people from their sins.
Right.
And they connected that directly to his promise in John 14, 1-3.
So they're tying the prepared place, the heavenly home, directly to the concept of salvation.
Yeah, being reconciled to God through Jesus.
It's a subtle connection, but it really deepens our understanding of what that prepared place represents.
It's not just about a physical destination.
It's about a state of being, this restored relationship with God.
Made possible through Jesus' sacrifice.
Powerful stuff. Did any of the pastors reference Revelation?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I figured they would. Hard to talk about heaven without bringing up Revelation 21.
Right, those images of the new heaven and
The
earth.
city of God coming down.
It just taps into that sense of awe and wonder.
It's a passage that's full of imagery, symbolism, all ripe for interpretation.
But it also raises questions.
Like what?
Is a heaven a literal place?
Yeah.
A metaphor? What does it mean for our lives here and now?
It's a good reminder that even with a passage that seems straightforward, like John 14, 1-3, there's always more to explore, more to unpack.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
Absolutely, both for us as preachers and for our congregations.
And the fact that these pastors, coming from all these different backgrounds,
Yeah.
different theological perspectives,
We're able to find such diverse meanings
and application.
in this one verse.
Yeah. It speaks to the power and the richness of Scripture.
It really shows that the Bible isn't some static text,
Yeah.
but a living word,
They keep speaking to us in new ways.
relevant for today.
But let's shift gears for a second and talk about something that really struck me.
Okay.
The idea of discipleship as preparation for heaven.
Ooh, that's interesting. What about it?
Well, Crossroads Assembly of God had a really unique take on this.
Yeah.
They framed John 14, 1-3 as a call to equip believers for their heavenly home.
What do you think about that? Yeah, it's a perspective that we often kind of gloss over, don't we?
Yeah, we get so focused on getting people to heaven
Right.
that we forget to prepare them for what happens when they get there.
It's like we're handing them a boarding pass, but not helping them pack their bags.
Yeah, exactly.
But Crossroads Assembly of God, they're challenging us to think differently.
Yeah.
They're saying John 14, 1-3 isn't just about Jesus preparing a place.
Right.
It's about us getting ready to actually live there.
To inhabit that place.
Exactly. And that raises a lot of questions, right?
It does. Like, what does it even mean to be prepared for heaven?
Yeah, what kind of baggage are we supposed to leave behind?
What character traits, what spiritual disciplines do we need to develop?
To actually thrive in God's presence.
All of that.
It shifts the focus from waiting around to actively pursuing growth.
Yeah, transformation.
It's not enough to just believe the right things.
Yeah.
We got to become the kind of people who can actually experience the fullness of life in God's presence.
And that's where discipleship comes in, right?
Exactly.
It's about more than just doctrine.
Yeah.
It's about helping people develop the character of Christ.
The kind of character that's fit for eternity.
It's about cultivating humility,
Yeah.
love, joy, peace, patience.
Kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control.
All those things, those aren't just virtues for living here on earth.
Right.
They're the building blocks of a soul that's ready for heaven. It makes you realize that discipleship isn't just about getting people into heaven.
Yeah.
It's about preparing them to flourish there,
To thrive.
to help them develop a taste for the things of God
A longing for his presence.
that'll only be fully satisfied in eternity.
And that brings us back to something we talked about earlier.
What's that?
The idea of heaven not just being a place,
Yeah.
but a state of being,
What if it's not just a destination?
but a way of life that begins here and now.
If that's true,
Yeah,
then discipleship isn't just about preparing for the future.
right.
It's about experiencing a little bit of heaven in the present.
That's a beautiful thought.
It's about helping people cultivate a deep relationship with God
Yeah.
that changes their lives today.
And helping them discover that joy, the peace, the love that comes from being connected to God,
Giving them a glimpse of what it means to truly live in His presence.
both now and forever.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into John 14, 1-3,
Yeah.
I'm left with this challenge.
What's that?
How do we move beyond those simplistic ideas of heaven and discipleship?
Yeah, how do we present these truths in a way that really captures people's imaginations.
Ignites their hearts, compels them to action.
Maybe it starts with recognizing how deep and complex these concepts really are.
Yeah, heaven isn't just a place.
It's breaking into our lives right now.
Discipleship isn't about rules.
It's about transformation.
Becoming more like Christ.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe,
Yeah.
if we can really grasp what John 14, 1-3 is saying,
Yeah.
we can start to experience a taste of heaven right here on earth.
A taste that leaves us longing for more.
For the fullness of God's presence in eternity.
And that, my friend, is a message worth preaching.